Hello and welcome to day 156 of 365 days towards racial change. My name is Tom Lenz Nyback. We're here talking about black issues in America and how to maybe overcome how the American machine, white power, the myriad of issues arrayed against black folks, and how we are we're kind of at the bottom of the pool of access to wealth and resources in America, and we need to find some ways that more of us have access. We got plenty of people, black people in politics, rappers becoming billionaires. We've had our sports stars for ages, talk show hosts, journalists. Yeah, but they're a minority, they're a fractional minority of the minority enjoying the wealth and resources of America, where you have other groups, especially white, and the majority of whites moving and getting along just well in America. There are a lot of reasons. I would note that America is a white constructed system. Therefore, it's always going to cater to that, and it's a system that it's a white system created by whites, administered by whites. Therefore, whites are the beneficiary of that, and it would just be a lot different, if there had been one black man or woman at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, right? A Jew, maybe, right? Well, what would happen, if you had it changes the dynamic, it changes the fundamentals of this document that supports America and other processes in America and initiatives. The people who think of it, administer it, create it, are putting that in place to benefit their own, over long term. Now, with this country's way, um, we see a system that's benefited whites, disadvantaged blacks, even beyond the creation of the Constitution. This 200-year-old country, 200 years plus and change. But the slavery issue predates that even by many years. So we're here, we land here in the year 2019 with a white system catering to whites, and it's beginning to go into overload, and I think kind of a critical mass state, which we're going to talk about today as we dissect the word socialism to a degree. I'm not an expert on the term. I'm just going to talk about some prevailing issues in America and in the world that are beginning to play out in an exponential way. So two thoughts emerge as I continue this project. I'm glad I do it. I'm glad I'm doing it and staying dedicated to it. Just get a year out of the way. I'm a man who has trouble following through, sticking to something. So 156 days that's a good thing. There's not done a lot of good for 156 straight days in my life. This is going to be a milestone for me. two thoughts emerge. First thought is for the black mind. Having said the foundation of black issues, the creation of slavery history and stuff, for the black mind, is it still housed, oppressed? Does it still think in ways of slavery? Is this passed on from generation to generation? And the other side of that same coin, I'm talking about the mind of America. Do white people have the same expectation of privilege, power, ease of movement in society? And I'm talking generalities for the populations. You got, I can go even back to my hometown and find poor white folks struggling. We can find it, but it's a minority of the white folks that are struggling, not the majority of them. Now, on the flip side, you got the majority of black folks struggling, not a minority. So it's a problem there. Black folks are a minority, yet the majority of them are not doing well. If you look at a per capita thing, it's just doesn't play out well, and the system is not ministering to its disadvantaged as it says it should be, or that it presents itself as doing. You look at the world, look at a disaster in America, and America's got to drag its feet to help its own, but we'll send military and all kinds of resources halfway around the world in a heartbeat. That should never be standard policy for this nation. Take care of the people in your own house first. Okay, that's a little illustration of that. Now, my second thought is for financial literacy among black folks, understanding how dollars are spent, taking some time, just taking a little bit of time, understanding international monetary policy, how that comes back and bears an impact on American life. I think that's important discussion, important things to learn. Understanding inflation, hidden taxes, the healthcare um, disaster initiated by the Obama administration, their only public mistake. um, if I ever can sit down with President Obama, I'm going to thank him overall. But that one little niche, he really, yeah, I think he caved into some greater powers. Of course, the president's not as all powerful as people think, but I think he caved into some pressures and all that. So, but understanding, I want to do some things for my life with my dollars. I don't want to consistently keep serving others. I don't want to pay somebody's mortgage by renting a space um, and such. So, black folks need to understand that. We need to understand our money being spent in places that are selling products from nations that are hostile to black advantage. Like how money works, what money's doing. Do we know what our relatives want if they're, as they're growing older and getting ready to go on to the next life or whatever beliefs you have? My family doesn't talk about money, therefore we just are struck, surprised, and stupid when people pass away. We don't know what's going on. We're suddenly thrust in to this environment that we with a steep learning curve, which doesn't have to be. White people don't move in that way. White people know exactly how things work, what's working, who's doing what. They know how finances move. Black people need to get much better with that. Get some transparency around that. It's very sad. I mean, it's one thing not to have anything, but then if you do have something when you leave this earth, you think you want to give some people a heads up. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. He's written 3 great works. If you only get one of his books, get this one. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We are in this text today, and I want, on page 15, we're going to be page 15, but I'm sorry, we're not going to talk about this today. We're talking about socialism. Um, I'm doing a bunch of videos today. I got crosswise there. We're not in that book today. Tomorrow we will be. Oh, black labor, white wealth, search for power and economic justice. See, we just fly by the seat of our pants. Here's cool. It's informal. Dr. Anderson's national plan to empower Black America. Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com and the Heritage Institute in Washington, D.C. Behind me, you see the hashtag #US2 symbol. You'll find Black women conversing, supporting one another with Black female issues. There, I think that's very important. There are some distinctions, male, female. Check out Blog Enough, BLAGGENUF, kind of a Black Facebook. And if you can't find your flavor here on the web, keep searching or start your own community. And also we have story time. We're going to have story time again in a couple days. We're ramping up a little bit because we're getting more specific and myopic with the text. So it's taking more time as we slowly go through it to illustrate slave life and how that may bear some similarities here in today's modern age. All right, I wanted to touch on socialism, and it kind of came out, I was just doing my notes, and then this socialism idea discussion expanded, so I just ran with it. Um, I've not heard socialism mentioned so much. I don't know if it's I'm watching CNN more or if I'm just being more aware, but I've never heard it mentioned so much in the past. We're running up to the 2020 presidential election, and I'm hearing that word dropped here and there, and I think we need to take a look at it to some degree. I'm going to kind of wrestle my way through it. I'm not an expert in the term, but I'm just going to take some definitions. I'm going to explain some things I'm observing now in America with this brief time, and the world with this brief time we have left. I think I'm seeing images, I'm hearing things, and what we need to, I think, give it its due. Give it its due. So socialism, the idea of socialism is it's having all things in common. That's kind of a generic um, definition of it. All things in common, essentially administered by the people, and it sounds like you're in a world a national ashram, where an ashram that was Gandhi's big thing, where you come to a community, everybody participates equally, there's rotations of work and things like that, and it works out good if everybody's agreeable and sharing and open and things like that. But the heart of man is challenged to a large degree, and that community thing, that's very hard to sustain, just because the nature of man is going to creep up in those instances. But I wanted to further that and clarify socialism. It's not just everybody having everything in common and sharing. It's it, it's that the sharing and things in common, but it's administered by the government. You know, that's that we miss that. And see, America likes to do tricky things with language. You know, they drop these bombs, political terms, socialism and stuff like that, as though it's a bad thing to them, when in reality the American government is incredibly socialist, or to a large degree, right? We we like to think we're a capitalist society, a free society, and all that things like that. I'm going to demonstrate that's not what's happening in America. Uh, they say they drop those socialist terms to keep us skeptical and paranoid of one another when we talk about sharing and having things in common. I think it may work. Well, like I said, it might not be sustainable, but it may work uh, to get us moving in the right direction in a patriotic way. But capitalism is the way America, the way America does things. It's all amped up, and where so much wealth goes upward and it misses, those at the bottom strata of America don't receive um, what's due, what's going on. They're whole participants. But what America does is it strips the poor of their ability to move economically, and that in turn, so then the government in turn creates programs and all that, but the programs are created with conditions to control the population that they're serving. There is some of the essence of socialism. When the government is has its hands in everything and all that. It may look like separate entities and agents uh, who are divorced from government are administering these things, but everybody involved, the whole chain is created by the government. Um, it is financed by the government. It's administered by the government. It is a socialism. Everybody um, is in a big pool, And the problem with that whole thing is issue with self-determinism. We no longer have the option to move about. We're shackled to some activity that bleeds off our time and resources in a way that we don't want to. Um, that's more of the idea of socialism. It's maybe it's the specters of Karl Marx and communism and all these things that we can conjure up to make it distasteful, but it is exactly what the United States government is administering in here and the world. All right, and I'm not going to talk maybe explicitly, specifically about Black folks in this post, but get the idea that because of this socialist system that I'm attempting to illustrate, um, Black people are at the bottom of it and are compelled to move and live, uh, use their energy in it, just as the slaves did um, for hundreds of years. We've not gotten as far away from slavery as one might think. Um, and what really sparked my mind churning about this is I just saw a little piece, CNN, 60,000 homeless in Los Angeles alone, big major city. 60,000. Now, see why that's important in the discussion with socialism is that these people will, um, like, what's the government going to do? What if happens when you hit 70,000, 80,000? Because it's not something. I don't see a whole lot of initiative to get these people moving again and performing in society. There's a lot of reasons: mental health, drug addiction, incarceration. Uh, you know, uh, jobs paid, living wages, things like that. There's a lot of issues, but well, that's another discussion. I'm just talking about the pure numbers. What's going to happen is that the government is going to step in and going to be like, yeah, you get this, you know, various housing vouchers and stuff. There's little programs going on now. They're a real pain in the ass. I gotta say, I was a recipient of one of these coveted vouchers, and nobody wanted them. I couldn't get any feedback. It wasn't like I really hit the lottery. People make it sound like, boy, oh, you got this voucher. No, it's just not like that in reality. It's a pain in the butt to get that. So, but anyway, the government is going to eventually force people to take something, and it's going to compel them to be servants of the state. That's what's going to happen, you know, and which is that's another reason why some of the people are disenfranchised and homeless out there as well. Is that people in their heart recognize they're being used, they're fodder for the system. Their interests aren't being respected or pointed towards. You know, I'm sure most of them were probably have been through and or failed the public school system. Well, what a farce! You're gonna take a person hostage. I somehow came through it, got my little high school diploma and whatnot, but it didn't guarantee me anything. I didn't go anywhere with it. I don't use anything from it. 13 years of waste. You know, taxpayer money, my time, travel, incredible. Um, so they got 60,000 homes. Student loan dilemma. I'm in a very low-paying job with few hours, and I dare not, stick my economic head too far out of the water because there's a big economic machine waiting to get paid back from student loans and all that. I'm cool with that, but once you start moving up financially, you start to see there's all these mechanisms and machines and things waiting for you that reach out and stick their hands all in your financial world to siphon off more of your time and self-determinism. Term I'm starting to really become close to because it's something I'm not experiencing uh, to the fullest at this time. You um, Inflation. I talk about financial security, financial literacy, financial inflation when the dollar uh, seems to secure less and less resources. That's an important thing to understand. That's a hidden tax. Mandatory health care, hidden tax. You Anytime we are financially compelled to participate where we otherwise would not, we're being taxed. You know, but our government uses flowery terms, um, dilutes the message with other politically charged um, phrases, and we lose sight and never get at the heart of what we should be focusing on. Our own self-determination is what I'm promoting. Yeah, we got infrastructure, national defense and things like that, but it doesn't have to. We don't have to sacrifice that much to make that happen. You know, the way society itself, capitalist society. Now, there's a capitalist element to this socialist, underneath this socialist umbrella, where Americans especially believe they're just supposed to get um, all they can from their uh, fellow citizens at whatever expense. You know, real estate's the biggest one, where the renter is paying the mortgage for someone's property as they sit back and they just gain and gain, and that person, their life is drained out of them, leaving nothing in the world when they pass on. I think this system, these initiatives, issues we deal with financially and all that, these pressures could be a huge contributing factor to our gun violence in America, in our workplaces, schools, and things like that. Um, of course, it's not specifically a white issue. It's interestingly, it's primarily a white issue. But we got this recently. A black man back in Virginia Beach was disgruntled and went on a shooting spree. You have your outliers, but I don't know. It's interesting to know that the most privileged population in the country, uh, representatives from that population, are doing the most damage out here uh, with their weapons. I mean, it ain't like down the hood having a beef over drugs and stuff. Crime and crime. We kind of get that, but this idea of these lone white men primarily gunning down people when these white men are privileged. They have what are they not having? And I think maybe they're feeling the encroachment of this uh, encroachment on their self-determinism. Therefore, they're freaking out because they've been so privileged and they've got an expectation of success in the system. If that's threatened, they don't know where to go with that. Um, they know they're disenfranchised. Got to be careful, that I don't lapse into complacency. I'm coming. My motivation, I mentioned Dr. Anderson and a lot of other sources for my motivation, but my motivation for the project is even my own life because I've seen it, I've lived it, I should say, myself in shelter systems and things like that. And I've got to be careful of complacency because for a short period of time now, I've been away from consistent exposure to black suffering through dysfunction, criminal behavior, drug abuse, homelessness, things like that. And so sometimes making this project is a little bit of a struggle, but I'm reading other sources, I'm educating myself to keep it as fresh as I can in my mind about what's really going on, how this nation is positioning certain sections of the population, primarily black, into a, a, a socialist conformity. They're not using the language, they're using the word socialist and socialism in another way, but it's devious, and we need to be awake and aware of what's happening. Um, especially to Black people in America. We're going to visit this. This is something, again, we're going to dissect more and more. We get more myopic on these issues as we continue, as I'm able to articulate, get my head around what's really going on in America and with myself. So thanks for hanging out. We will continue again. Tomorrow we'll get into a Black History Reader. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. That's day 156 out of the way. Hope you were able to follow that. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.